Traditionally, professional language served as a medium for explanation, persuasion, or record-keeping. A memo was simply a tool used by one human to inform another. Generative AI breaks that tradition. Sentences typed into an interface now function as operational triggers, initiating machine labor through a complex chain of computational choices. Because the primary entry point is a text box, many professionals fall into the interface trap. They treat the system as a conversational partner, providing casual, unstructured requests. This conversational approach fails because large language models are probabilistic engines. A probabilistic engine is a system that predicts the most likely next word based on statistical patterns in its training data, rather than following a rigid set of logic rules. Vague inputs lead these systems to produce generic reasoning and operationally dangerous errors disguised as confident prose. Professional survival now requires a shift in perspective. Words must be viewed as the governing layer of production, requiring the same rigor as a command system. Under-specification is the primary cause of prompt failure. This occurs when a professional leaves critical parameters, such as the target audience, specific constraints, or desired tone, completely unstated. A vague input enters a probabilistic cloud. The machine fills missing parameters with high-probability, generic phrasing. The polished output creates false security. Beneath the finished surface, the structure relies on unanchored logic nodes selected by statistical guess, not human intent. Active direction replaces this passive use. In this mode, the prompt acts as a temporary management layer, placed over the AI to force specific behavior and strict boundaries. This shift requires a reallocation of human effort. Time once spent on the manual execution of a first draft must move upstream to problem framing and downstream to rigorous validation. A professional's value now resides in engineering the exact instructions required to govern the machine safely, rather than the simple production of fluent text. Structure is the first architectural requirement of a professional prompt. When confronted with a tangled sentence containing multiple, conflicting demands, AI models often drift. Without a clear hierarchy, the system cannot distinguish between a core task and a secondary request. This blueprint shows text blocks locking into a vertical hierarchy: context, task, scope, criteria, format, and caution. Context grounds the system and filters irrelevant data. At the base, caution acts as a barrier, blocking the model from making assumptions or presenting invented claims. Constructing a prompt in this way mirrors the preparation of a rigorous managerial brief for a human team. You define the boundaries before authorizing the work. Because order dictates priority, the machine relies on structural design to execute complex tasks without overreaching its authority. Precision is the second pillar of prompt architecture. Precision is achieved through vocabulary that limits interpretive drift. The goal is to choose words that leave as little room as possible for the model to guess your meaning. This diagram shows two diverging pathways based on verbs. Summarize triggers a generic compression funnel. Critique activates a targeted fault detection scan. Choosing the correct noun is equally vital. Changing from a broad report to a risk register entry forces data into a structured grid. Specific vocabulary strips away the model's default assumptions. It forces the system to align with your professional standards for tone and density. This control is the primary defense against evidential risk. Evidential risk is the danger that a model will produce high-confident fabrications or hallucinations to satisfy a request. Precise constraints, like demanding specific citations, mitigate this threat. In an AI workflow, nouns and verbs function as technical specifications for the task. Precision prevents the model from defaulting to generic stock framing, thereby protecting the operational utility of the final product. Intent is the third and deepest pillar of prompt architecture. Even a structurally sound and precise prompt will produce weak results if the underlying operational purpose remains hidden from the system. The same set of facts can be used for very different purposes. Preparing a document intended to persuade requires a different logical approach than preparing one intended to warn of potential failure. This diagram illustrates identical input prompts passing through two different intent filters. When the intent is unspoken, the machine weights and prioritizes the data points randomly, leading to unstable and often irrelevant outputs. Stating your intent forces you to resolve internal professional conflicts before generating text. You must decide whether your objective is speed, caution, or persuasion before the machine can assist you effectively. Without a functional, real-world purpose, the model writes in a vacuum. Explicit intent is what transforms raw generated text into a usable business asset. Beyond technical execution, the ability to direct AI creates a new form of organizational power. First drafts carry immense gravity in modern institutions. Because people naturally revise around an existing structure rather than building from scratch, the first version of a document often anchors all subsequent debate. The person who authors the prompt dictates the biases and risk postures embedded in that draft. They decide which variables matter and which omissions remain hidden behind the machine's fluent prose. This hierarchy chart shows information flow bypassing traditional middle management, illustrating the rise of prompt gatekeepers who control narrative framing. This power centralizes through reusable prompt templates, locking in conceptual structures and forcing all downstream reporting to operate strictly within established boundaries. Prompt power often masks accountability. A prompter can exercise significant influence while their choices remain hidden behind the objective-sounding polish of the machine's output. Whoever controls the instruction layer controls the organization's perception of reality. In this environment, language is a primary site of operational power. The economic reality of generative AI is harsh. It strips the prestige and value away from routine drafting and manual text production. Passive users are the most vulnerable. These are workers who accept AI-generated outputs with minimal critique, essentially training themselves into commodity status. A second group at risk includes middle performers, whose professional identity is tied exclusively to the manual creation of standard documents. In contrast, leverage will accrue to professionals who combine deep subject mastery with rigorous prompt discipline. Survivors do not treat AI as a replacement for thought. They view it as a provisional analyst that requires strict and skeptical supervision. Human value has moved permanently. It now sits upstream at problem definition and downstream at the final point of quality control. Trust, ethical restraint, and the willingness to absorb consequences are exclusively human domains that algorithms cannot replicate. Professional safety now depends on the ability to detect and prevent expensive, systemic mistakes, rather than the speed of text generation. In the new command economy, your value lies in deciding which words are allowed to exist and absorbing the accountability for the result, moving past the simple production of text.